Then the cave moved.
There's a point.
So Element said as even stiffly, you don't turn back from.
Move!
Imagine being trapped hundreds of feet beneath the surface in an underwater cave system as it collapses around you. The darkness is absolute, the air is running out, and every grain of silt means one less chance of survival. This isn't fiction. This is the harrowing true story of a diver's impossible escape from eternal darkness. My tank was a metal monster on my back. It was so heavy. It pulled my shoulders down and made me want to fall over backward. I had to lean forward just to stand up on the boat. The black rubber of my suit smelled like old tires and felt tight around my neck. It was hot in the sun. Sweat was trickling down my back where I couldn't scratch it. I looked at Dad. He looked like a giant in his gear. He had so many hoses and gauges. He looked at me and winked. He checked my straps one more time. He pulled them tight. It squeezed my tummy. "So?" he asked. His voice sounded normal. My voice sounded small. I nodded. We walked to the edge of the boat. My flippers made me walk like a duck. It was hard not to trip. I put one hand on my mask and the other on my belt. We stepped off the ledge. The world turned into bubbles. The water rushed over my head and it was loud, but not like outside loud. It was a rushing noise that swallowed everything. Then the bubbles cleared away and everything was blue. It was the bluest blue I ever saw. It was like swimming inside a giant jewel. The water was warm. It held me up so the tank didn't feel heavy anymore. I felt light. I felt like the astronauts on TV, floating in space, where gravity doesn't work. I kicked my legs. My yellow flippers pushed the water. We went down slowly. I could hear my own breathing. It sounded like a machine. Hiss. It was the only sound in the whole world. Tiny fish swam by my face. They were silver and quick. They didn't care that I was there. They just moved around me like I was a rock. Dad reached out and took my hand. His glove was black and rough. My hand felt tiny inside his. He pointed down. Below us, the blue water turned dark. There was a hole in the bottom of the ocean. It was a big, round mouth. It looked like it was waiting to eat us. A thin yellow string went from a rock near us all the way down into the dark mouth. That was our path. I squeezed Dad's hand harder. The hole was too big. I was too small. But Dad wasn't scared. He swam toward the yellow string and pulled me with him. As long as I held his hand, the monster mouth couldn't hurt me. We swam past the bright sand and into the shadow. The blue water started to turn gray. The sun was going away. I looked back up one time, but Dad tugged my hand. We had to go deeper. The sun was gone. It didn't exist anymore. There was no sky and no boat and no birds. There was only the black. It was a thick, heavy black that pressed against the glass of my mask. It felt like if I took the mask off, the black would fill up my nose and mouth and choke me. The only safe thing was the light. My flashlight made a white cone in the water. Dust motes danced inside the beam. They looked like tiny stars, but they weren't pretty. They were just dirt. The walls of the cave were close now. They weren't smooth like the rocks at the beach. They were sharp and jagged. They looked like the teeth of a shark that hadn't brushed in a long time. There were holes and shadows everywhere. I didn't like the shadows. I thought things were hiding in them, waiting for my light to look away. My breathing was too loud. It echoed inside my head. I wanted to ask Dad to go back up to the sun, but I couldn't talk with the rubber thing in my mouth.
It tasted like plastic and salt. I just followed his fins. They were moving slow. Then the water started to shiver. It wasn't me shaking. It was the whole ocean. I felt it in my teeth first, The plastic mouthpiece rattled against my gums. Then I felt it in my chest. It was a low, deep vibration. It sounded like a freight train was driving right over our heads, but we were underwater. The sound got louder and louder until it hurt my ears. It was a roar that made my bones shake inside my skin. I stopped kicking. I froze. I looked at Dad's light. It was shaking too. Something hit my tank. It felt like a hammer. Then another thing hit my shoulder. It hurt. Rocks were falling. The ceiling was breaking apart. The cave was angry. Dad turned around fast. He didn't wave or make the okay sign. He swam at me very fast. His eyes were huge behind his mask. He looked scary. He grabbed the straps of my vest. He didn't hold my hand nice this time. He shoved me. He pushed me hard, backward and down. I didn't understand. I thought he was mad at me. I hit the rock wall with my back. He jammed me into a small crack in the wall. It was tight and scraped my suit. My hand opened because I was scared. My flashlight slipped out of my fingers. I watched it spin away. The light spun in circles, showing the falling rocks. Then the cloud came. It wasn't water anymore. It was thick brown soup. The falling rocks had stirred up all the mud from the bottom. The mud rolled over me like a heavy blanket. It swallowed my flashlight. It swallowed Dad's light.
The dark came back, but this time it was worse. It was touching my face. I waved my hand in front of my mask, but I couldn't see my fingers. I couldn't see the yellow string. I couldn't see Dad. I reached out to find him, but I only felt the cold, slimy mud. I was alone in the soup. The train noise was still roaring, but now I was blind. I curled my legs up to my chest and tried not to cry, because Dad said crying fills your mask with water. I was just a tiny speck in the dark, and the mountain was falling on top of me. I squeezed my eyes shut and then opened them again. It didn't make a difference. Open or closed, everything was the same heavy black color. I stayed very still. I was a statue. That is the rule. Dad told me 100 times in the pool. He said if you get lost, you don't swim. You don't look for me. You freeze. You make yourself heavy and you wait. So I made myself heavy. My back was pressed against the sharp rock where Dad pushed me. I could feel a point digging into my wetsuit right near my shoulder blade. It hurt, but I didn't move away. The pain told me where the wall was. If I moved, I might float into the middle of nothing. I needed the wall. I waited for the dust to go away. In the ocean, sand falls down fast, but this wasn't sand. It was the brown cloud from the angry mountain. It felt thick against my cheeks like cold gravy. I tried to look through it, but my eyes just hurt from straining. There were weird flashes of color in the dark, purple and green spots that weren't real. They were just my brain trying to find something to see. I started to count. That's what I do when I have to get a shot at the doctor. 1, 2, 3. I counted very slow. I pictured the numbers in my head.
I made them bright yellow. I got all the way to 100. I looked left. I looked right. I looked up. I waited for the beam. Dad's light is brighter than anything. It cuts through the water like a laser sword. I wanted to see that white line slicing through the mud. I wanted to see his fins moving. There was nothing, just the black water pressing on my mask. I started counting again. 101, 102. I counted all the way to 200. It took a long time. My heart was beating hard against the inside of my ribs. It felt like a bird trapped in a cage. The counting didn't help anymore. The numbers were just empty things in my head. My legs were getting cold. The cold water was sneaking inside my suit. It felt like icy fingers pinching my skin. I needed to know if the hole I was in was big or small. I slowly moved my hand out. I reached into the dark. My fingers brushed against something. It wasn't a rock. It was slimy. It felt soft and slippery, like the skin of a peach that went bad in the fridge. It felt gross. I yanked my hand back and tucked it under my armpit. I didn't want to touch the cave anymore. The cave felt alive and wet. The silence was the worst part. The big train noise was gone. Now there was only the sound of me. Every time I breathed in, the air hissed. Every time I breathed out, the bubbles rumbled past my ears. They tickled the side of my head. They were loud and lonely. I wanted the noise to stop. I wanted to hear Dad tap on his tank with his metal stick. Clink, clink, clink. I waited for the clink. I held my breath to listen better. The silence was heavy. It pushed on my eardrums. There was no clink.
There was no scraping. There was nothing. Panic started to bubble up in my tummy. It felt hot and sour. I needed him to know where I was. I forgot about the rule to be quiet. I forgot about saving air. I opened my throat to scream, "Sss," as loud as I could, but the word didn't come out. The big rubber mouthpiece blocked my tongue. The sound got trapped in my mouth. It just vibrated in my teeth and turned into a gargled mess of bubbles. The bubbles rushed up my face and blinded me even more. I stopped yelling. I realized then that I couldn't talk. I couldn't see. I couldn't move. I was a tiny speck wrapped in mud and rock. The water wasn't hugging me. It was waiting. I was all alone in the dark that doesn't end. The thick soup around me started to thin out. It didn't go away completely, but it wasn't like cold gravy anymore. Now it was more like dirty water in a mop bucket. I could see my own fins. They looked pale and far away. I could see the sharp edges of the cave walls again. They looked like jagged teeth waiting to bite. I remembered the most important thing, the yellow line. Dad tied it to a tree outside before we went in. He said it was our leash. He said as long as we had the yellow line, we could never get lost. It was the road map home. If the lights went out, you just hold the line and slide your hand along it until you see the sky. I needed to find the yellow string. I turned my head slowly. The light on my helmet was shaking because my neck was shivering. The beam cut through the murky water. I looked at the floor. It was covered in mud and little broken stones. I didn't see the yellow color. I swam forward just a tiny bit. I used my fingertips to pull myself along the rock wall. I didn't kick.
Kicking makes the dust come back. I was very careful. Then I saw it. It was lying on a pile of gray silt. It was bright yellow. It was the prettiest thing I had ever seen. It looked like a piece of sunshine trapped in the dark. I felt my heart do a little jump. I reached out and grabbed it. It felt wrong immediately. The line was supposed to be tight. It was supposed to be strong and straight, pulling toward the exit. But when I grabbed it, the string went slack. It floated in my hand like a dead worm. It was wiggly and loose. I pulled on it gently. It came toward me. I kept pulling. I followed the yellow color with my eyes until it stopped. The string went under a rock. The rock was huge. It was bigger than the refrigerator in our kitchen. It had fallen from the ceiling. It sat there heavy and mean, crushing the floor. The yellow line went under the big stone and didn't come out the other side. I looked close at the spot where the string went under. It was flattened. The threads were all frayed and fuzzy like the yarn on my old sweater. It was cut. The rock had smashed it. The part of the line that went to the outside world was gone. It was buried under the mountain. I was holding a piece of string that was attached to nothing. I dropped the line. It drifted down into the mud in slow motion. My tummy hurt really bad. It wasn't a stomachache like when you eat too much candy. It was a sharp, twisting pain. It felt like someone had reached inside me and squeezed my guts with an icy hand. I looked around. There was a tunnel to the left. There was a tunnel to the right. There was a hole above me. They all looked exactly the same.
They were all dark and rocky. Without the yellow line, I didn't know which way was out. I didn't know which way went deeper into the dark. I wanted to cry. My eyes got hot and prickly. Tears started to leak out. I automatically brought my hand up to wipe my face, but my knuckles hit the hard glass of my mask. I couldn't touch my face. I couldn't wipe the tears away. They rolled down my cheeks and pooled in the rubber nose pocket. The water inside the mask started to rise up near my eyelashes. I blinked and the salt stung my eyes. I was trapped in my own suit. I was trapped in the cave. The yellow line was broken and I was on the wrong side of the rock. I stared at the metal circle hanging from my vest. Dad called it the pressure gauge. He told me it was the most important clock in the world. It didn't tell time. It told me how many breaths I had left. The needle was usually in the green slice of the pie. Green meant we were okay. Green meant we could look at fish and play. But the needle wasn't in the green anymore. It had fallen into the yellow space. It was shaking and it was creeping toward the red line. Red meant 0. Red meant the air stops coming. Red meant I would go to sleep and never wake up. I couldn't stay by the big rock with the broken string. If I stayed there crying, the needle would hit the red line and I would die. I had to find a way out before the tank went empty. I looked at the black hole in front of me. It was a tunnel, but it looked like a mouth. The rocks were jagged and sharp like shark teeth. It was the only way forward. I took a deep breath that tasted like rubber and kicked my fins. I floated into the mouth.
It was very tight. The water felt heavier here. The walls were covered in brown slime that looked like mucus. I tried to stay in the middle, but the tunnel started to shrink. The floor came up and the ceiling came down. It felt like the mountain was trying to give me a hug, but it was hugging too hard. It was squeezing me. I made myself as flat as a pancake. I stretched my arms out in front of me. I tried to be small. I held my breath to make my chest smaller. Then I felt it. The metal tank on my back hit the stone roof. It didn't just make a noise, it made my whole skull shake. It sounded like a giant was dragging a metal fork across a dinner plate, but the sound was inside my head. It was a grinding, angry noise. I tried to swim forward, but I stopped. I wasn't moving. The tank was caught on the ceiling, and my belly was scraping the floor. I was wedged in. I was stuck like a cork in a bottle. Panic exploded in my chest. It felt hot and fizzy. I tried to back up, but my fins hit the rock behind me. I couldn't go forward. I couldn't go back. The heavy stone roof was pressing down on my spine. It felt like the whole world was sitting on top of me. I wanted to scream for my mom, but I only had the rubber mouthpiece to bite on. The needle was dropping. I knew it. I closed my eyes. I didn't want to see the walls crushing me. I kicked my legs hard. I thrashed around like a fish that got caught in a net. I pushed with my hands against the slimy rocks. I kicked and kicked. Something sharp snagged my leg. I felt a tug and then a stinging sensation. The rock bit through my wetsuit.
The rubber ripped open. The water that touched my skin was freezing. It felt like an icicle stabbing my thigh. It hurt, but I slipped
Looked
forward.
like a piece of...
The tank ground against the roof one more time, a long, terrible scrape, and then I popped out. I tumbled into a slightly bigger space. My leg burned from the cold water and the scratch. My heart was beating so fast it made my vision blurry. I turned around and looked at the small hall I just came through. It looked angry. The cave wasn't just a pile of rocks. It felt like a monster. It had tried to eat me, but I tasted bad, so it spit me out. I checked the gauge again. The needle was touching the red line now. The dark was still everywhere, and I was running out of time. The air in my mouth changed. It didn't taste like the rubber hose anymore. It tasted sharp and dirty. It tasted like the jar of old pennies Dad keeps on his dresser, the ones that smell like metal and old hands. It made the back of my throat feel sticky. I tried to swallow the taste away, but my mouth was too dry. There was no spit left, only the taste of copper. I sucked in a breath, but the air didn't want to come out of the tank. It was hard to pull. It felt like trying to drink a thick milkshake through a straw that someone had bent in half. I had to use my whole chest to drag the air into my lungs. My cheeks hurt from pulling so hard against the rubber mouthpiece. My head started to hurt too. It wasn't a normal headache. It felt like someone had tied a belt around my forehead and was pulling it tighter and tighter. Every time my heart beat, the belt got tighter. Thump, tight, thump, tight. The noise of my own blood was loud in my ears. It sounded like someone was banging a drum inside my skull. I looked down at the gauge on my vest. The glass was foggy, so I had to squint. The needle was trembling. It wasn't in the happy green slice anymore. It had fallen all the way through the yellow part. It was touching the red line now. The red line looked like a scratch. It looked like danger. Dad said red meant the end. I was out of the tight squeeze, but this new place was scary in a different way. It was too big. I shined my flashlight around, but the beam just disappeared. It didn't hit a wall. It didn't hit the floor. It just went on forever into the black water. I felt like a tiny crumb floating in a giant room. The darkness felt heavy. It felt like a thick, wet blanket was wrapped around me, pushing against my skin. My leg burned where the rock had cut me. The cold water was sneaking inside my wetsuit through the rip. It felt like icy fingers were crawling up my thigh, pinching my skin. The cold made me want to shiver, but I knew shivering used up air. I tried to stay stiff. I tried to be a statue, but I couldn't stop breathing fast. My chest was going up and down like a pump. I knew I needed to slow down, but my body wouldn't listen to me. My body knew the air was running out. The taste of pennies was getting stronger. It tasted like blood. I felt dizzy. The black water seemed to be spinning slowly. I saw shapes in the dark that weren't real.
shadows that looked like hands reaching for my fins. I wanted to rip the mask off my face. I wanted to open my mouth and scream, but I knew if I did, the water would rush in and fill me up. I was all alone in the big dark, and the tank on my back was starting to die. I saw a new hole in the rock. It was wide and round, like the mouth of a giant pipe.
It looked much better than the big, empty black room. It looked like a hallway in a house. I thought maybe this was the way out. I thought maybe if I swam down this hallway, I would find a ladder, or a rope, or the sun. I pointed my fins toward it and kicked. The tunnel was quiet. The walls were close to me, but not too close. They were bumpy and gray. They looked like the skin of the elephant I saw at the zoo last summer, wrinkly and old. I followed the wrinkles. I swam for a long time. My legs were getting tired. They felt heavy, like they were filled with sand. I counted my kicks inside my head to stop thinking about the red line on my gauge. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I wanted the tunnel to go up. I wanted to see the water get lighter, but the water stayed dark. The beam of my flashlight was the only thing that was real. Then the light hit something flat. I stopped kicking. I floated forward a little bit, letting the water carry me. My hand touched cold rock. It wasn't a turn. It wasn't a corner. It was a wall. The tunnel just stopped. It was a dead end. My stomach did a flip. It felt like I missed a step on the stairs in the dark. I went the wrong way. I used up my air to swim into a trap. I felt tears prick my eyes, hot and salty, but they couldn't go anywhere inside my mask. I felt stupid. Dad would know the way, but I was just guessing. I had to go back. I had to turn around and leave the elephant tunnel. I was scared, so I moved too fast. I tried to spin my body around in a circle. I forgot how long my fins were. My right fin smashed into the floor.
It hit the bottom hard. The floor wasn't hard rock. It was covered in thick, soft dust. When my fin hit it, the dust exploded. It didn't float down like sand at the beach. It puffed up like smoke from a fire. It was a giant brown cloud. It happened so fast. 1 second the water was clear, and the next second it looked like thick chocolate milk. The cloud swallowed me. I held my flashlight up, but the light couldn't go anywhere. The brown dust caught the light and threw it back into my eyes. It was bright and blinding. I couldn't see the walls anymore. I couldn't see the floor. I couldn't even see my own knees. I tried to swim out of the cloud, but the cloud moved with me. Everything was brown and swirling. My head started to feel funny. It felt like when I spin on the tire swing for too long and then try to walk. The world was tipping over. I didn't know which way was up to the surface and which way was down to the bottom. I felt like I was falling, but I wasn't moving. The water held me in the middle of the brown smoke. I was lost inside a tiny room, and I couldn't find the door. I kicked hard to get away from the brown smoke. I didn't know if I was going forward or backward, but I just wanted to see clear water again. I swam until the light from my flashlight stopped bouncing back into my eyes. The water cleared up. The dust was gone. But now there was something new. The water felt different. It wasn't just wet anymore. It was sharp. It felt like I had jumped into a bathtub filled with ice cubes. My wetsuit used to feel tight and warm, like a hug from Mom. Now it felt like a cold, wet towel wrapped around my skin. It didn't keep the freezing water out. The cold was sinking right through the rubber. It went into my skin, and then it went deeper.
It felt like my bones were turning into glass. My teeth started to hurt. They were hitting each other. Click, click, click. I bit down hard on the rubber mouthpiece to make them stop, but my jaw wouldn't listen to me. My whole body was shaking. I wasn't doing it on purpose. It was like I was vibrating. The beam of my flashlight was shaking too, drawing messy squiggles on the rock walls because my arm couldn't hold still. I looked at my hand holding the light. It didn't look like my hand. It looked like a stranger's hand. The skin was bright white like paper. The tips of my fingers were all shriveled up. They looked like raisins. They looked like the old people's hands at the nursing home. Water started to leak into my mask, just a tiny bit, right by my left eye. It stung. I wanted to fix it. I reached up with my free hand to find the strap. I wanted to pull it tighter, but my fingers didn't work. I told my pointer finger to grab the buckle, but it stayed straight. It felt stiff and thick like a frozen sausage. I tried to hook my thumb under the rubber strap, but it slipped off. My hand felt like a block of wood. I couldn't feel the strap against my skin. I tried again, scratching at the side of my head. I got scared.
I was scared that if I kept trying, I would be clumsy. I might knock the mask off my face. If the mask fell off, the freezing water would go up my nose and I would drown. I put my hand down. I let the water leak in. It was safer to have water in my eye than no air in my lungs. The shaking in my body started to slow down. That should have been good, but it felt bad. The sharp pain of the cold was going away. Now I just felt heavy. My legs felt like they were made of concrete.
My eyelids felt heavier than my legs. The black water didn't look so scary anymore. It looked soft. It looked like a big, dark blanket. I thought about how nice it would be to just stop kicking. I could just float here. I could close my eyes and rest for a minute. Just a tiny nap. I imagined my bed at home with the spaceship quilt. It was so warm there. I stopped kicking. I let my fins hang down. The quiet was nice. Then my head bumped against the rocky ceiling. The bump woke me up. I felt a pinch of fear in my stomach. Dad told me once that people who sleep in the snow don't wake up. This was just like the snow. I couldn't sleep. I had to move my concrete legs. I had to make the white wrinkly fingers hold the light. I forced my fins to push the water. 1 kick, 2 kicks. I was still small, and the cave was still big, but I couldn't let the dark blanket cover me. My flashlight is getting sick. Before, the light was bright white, like the headlights on Dad's truck. It cut right through the dark water and hit the walls hard. But now, the light looks tired. It is turning a dirty yellow color. It looks like the weak sun just before it rains. It doesn't reach the walls anymore unless I get really close. The darkness is pushing back against the beam. It feels like the dark is stronger than the batteries. The weak light makes everything look wrong. The shadows are growing. They stretch out long and thin, crawling over the rocks like black spiders. I looked to my left and my heart stopped. I saw a leg. It was black and shiny, just like a wetsuit. It was Dad. He was waiting for me. I wanted to yell, but I had the rubber thing in my mouth. I kicked my heavy legs as fast as I could.
I reached out to grab his arm. I wanted him to hold me. I wanted him to tell me the way out. My fingers touched it. It was hard and slimy. It wasn't a leg. It was just a long, twisted rock sticking out of the mud. I pulled my hand back like I had touched a hot stove. It wasn't Dad. It was a trick. The rock looked like it had a face now, a mean face with holes for eyes. It was laughing at me because I was stupid enough to think it was a person. Tears filled up my mask again, mixing with the cold water that was already in there. The disappointment hurt more than the cold. I turned away from the mean rock. I pointed my yellow light forward, but the shadows kept moving. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw something swim by. It was big and gray. It looked like a shark. I know sharks live in the ocean, not in caves, but my brain didn't care. The shadow looked exactly like a fin. I spun around to look at it, but there was nothing there, just black water. Then I started to hear the voices. Usually, when I breathe out, the bubbles make a loud rumbling noise. It sounds like a pot boiling, but now the bubbles sounded like whispers. I stopped kicking. I held my breath so I could listen. The voices were still there. They were very quiet, like when Mom and Dad talk in the kitchen late at night so I won't wake up. They were whispering about me. They sounded angry. They were saying that I didn't belong here. I squeezed the handle of my flashlight tighter. My hand was shaking so bad that the yellow beam danced on the muddy floor. I felt something watching my back. The skin on the back of my neck got prickly. I wanted to turn around and check behind me, but I was too scared of what I might see. If I turned around, the light would show the monsters following me. If I didn't see them, maybe they weren't real. I kept my eyes front. The tunnel was getting smaller. The light flickered. It blinked off for a second, then came back on, but even dimmer than before. The yellow was turning orange. The battery was dying. If the light went out, the whispers would get loud. If the light went out, the shadow sharks would come close. I had to swim faster, but I was so small and the dark was so hungry. I grabbed the metal dial that hangs near my tummy. It is the gauge. Dad calls it the life teller. It has a glass face like a watch, but it doesn't tell time. It tells me how much air is left in the heavy yellow tank on my back. I had to bring the dial very close to my mask because the water was so murky. I wiped the glass with my thumb. The little black needle was trembling. Before, the needle was in the green part of the circle. Green is good. Green means go.
Green means I can breathe and everything is okay. But now the needle had fallen down. It was touching the red line. Red is the color of danger. It is the color of the stop sign at the end of our street. It is the color of blood when I scrape my knee on the sidewalk. Dad told me about the red line. He got down on one knee and looked me right in the eyes. He said I should never ever let the needle touch the red. He said if it touches the red, I have to tell him right away. But Dad isn't here. I can't tell him. I am all by myself in the dark. I tried to take a deep breath, but the air didn't want to come out. It felt like the air was hiding inside the tank.
I had to suck really hard on the rubber mouthpiece. It felt like trying to drink a very thick milkshake through a tiny crushed straw. My cheeks sucked in and my chest hurt. I pulled and pulled with my lungs, but I only got a little bit of air. It tasted stale. It tasted like old metal and dust. It didn't make me feel better. My lungs felt like they were burning, like when I run too fast in gym class and can't stop. A new kind of scary feeling started in my stomach. It wasn't like the fear of the monsters or the shadows. This fear was inside my own body. It crawled up my neck like a cold, wet bug. My heart started beating very fast against my ribs. Thump, thump, thump. It was hitting so hard I thought it might break my bones. The water around me felt heavier. It felt like the whole mountain was pushing down on top of me, squeezing the air out of my suit. I looked at the gauge again, hoping the needle would move back to the green. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe the dial was broken. But the needle was still on the red line. It looked like it was sinking even lower. The machine on my back made a weird noise when I breathed. It wasn't a smooth hiss anymore. It was a groaning sound. It sounded like the tank was dying. My fingers started to feel tingly. It felt like when my foot falls asleep during a long car ride, all prickles and numbness. The tips of my fingers felt cold and far away. I needed to get to the surface. I needed real air. I looked up, but there was only the black rock ceiling. It was bumpy and sharp. There was no sky. There was no sun. There was only the stone and the water and the empty tank. I sucked on the hose again. It was harder this time. The air came out in a thin, weak puff.
My throat made a choking sound. The panic made me want to kick and scream, but I knew I couldn't. Screaming uses air. Crying uses air. Everything uses air, and I didn't have any left to give. I was just a little kid in a big wet grave, and the red line was telling me that my time was up. I pushed myself away from the scary red needle. I knew I had to keep moving. If I stayed in one spot, the bad thoughts would get too loud. I kicked my legs and floated into a new part of the tunnel. The ceiling here was different. It wasn't just smooth rock anymore. It was low and crowded. Thick brown shapes hung down from the stone roof. They looked like old dead snakes. Dad told me once that tree roots can grow through rocks to find water. These roots had found the water, and they were everywhere. They looked like the twisted fingers of a giant witch reaching down to grab me. They were covered in fuzz and slime. I didn't want to touch them. I tried to make myself very small. I tucked my elbows in tight against my ribs. I pointed my toes. I glided between two big clumps of roots. The water was tight here. I felt something snag my right foot. I tried to kick forward, but my leg stuck. It wouldn't move. I stopped gliding. A thick, knotty root had looped around my ankle. It held me tight. I felt a spike of panic in my chest. It was worse than the red line. It felt like a monster had finally caught me. I pulled my leg hard. The root didn't break. It was strong, like the metal bars on the playground jungle gym. I twisted my body. I shook my leg. The rubber strap on my heel dug into my skin. It pinched and hurt. I was wasting my air. I was breathing too fast again. The bubbles rattled past my ears.
I needed to get free. I didn't think about it. I just reacted. I kicked as hard as I could, like I was kicking a soccer ball into the goal. There was a sudden slip. My foot shot free. But my foot felt weird. It felt too light. I turned my head inside the mask to look down. My yellow fin wasn't on my foot anymore. It was tangled in the witch's fingers. Then it slipped loose. I reached for it, but my arm was too short. The water pushed it away. I watched my bright yellow fin drift down. Below me, there was no floor. It was just a deep black hole. It looked like a mouth waiting to eat things. The fin spun around in the dark water. It got smaller and smaller. It looked like a falling leaf. Then the darkness swallowed it up completely. It was gone. I felt a lump in my throat. That fin was my motor.
Now I only had one. I tried to swim away from the roots. It was horrible. I kicked, but my body didn't go straight. I spun in a circle. The leg with the fin pushed lots of water, but the bare foot just slipped through the wetness. It felt like walking with one shoe on and one shoe off, stepping into a hole with every step. I had to kick harder to go straight. My legs started to burn. It felt like fire was inside my muscles. The tiredness was heavy. It sat on my shoulders. The tank felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I stopped ticking for a second and just drifted. The cold water touched my sock. I felt so small. The tunnel was endless and I was broken. I squeezed my eyes shut. I saw my mom's face.
I remembered how she smelled like laundry soap and warm blankets. I wanted her to pick me up. I wanted to be in the kitchen with the lights on. I wanted to be anywhere but this wet, dark hole with only one fin left. My chest hurt. It wasn't a sharp hurt like a cut. It was a heavy hurt, like a big dog was sitting on my ribs. The air from the tank tasted dry. It tasted like old rubber bands. My mouth was so dry that my tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. I couldn't swallow. I stopped trying to swim. My one yellow fin hung down in the dark. My bare foot felt naked and cold. The water was biting my toes. I let myself float up until the top of my tank clanked against the stone ceiling. I just wanted to close my eyes. I wanted to sleep. The dark was heavy and it pushed against my mask. I took a breath. The machine in my mouth made a hissing noise. It sounded like a snake. When I breathed out, a cloud of bubbles rushed past my ears. They were loud and angry. They usually smashed against the rock roof and turned into a flat silvery puddle. But this time, I watched one single bubble. It was small. It was the size of a marble I used to play with on the rug. It didn't smash. It was perfect and round. It shined in the light of my flashlight like a tiny moon. It had a silver skin. It looked precious. The tiny bubble hit the rock ceiling and bounced a little. It didn't pop. It stayed round. Then it started to move. It didn't float still like me. It rolled along the rough stone. It looked like a silver beetle crawling upside down. It was moving fast, like it knew a secret. I watched it slide over a bump in the rock. It wiggled and squeezed into a thin black crack in the stone. Then it went up. It disappeared into the crack. I remembered something Dad said at the lake. He said air always wants to go home. He said bubbles always find the surface because they belong to the sky, not the water. If you are lost, you look at the bubbles. They know the way to the sun. My heart started to beat faster. That tiny silver ball was smart. It found a door. I couldn't stay here. The roots were behind me and the deep hole was below me. The bubble was the only thing that wasn't trying to hurt me. It was my only friend in the whole world. I had to follow it. I pushed against the rock with my hand. I tried to kick. My body twisted sideways because of the missing fin. It felt clumsy. I felt like a broken toy boat. I had to kick hard with my good leg and use my hands to pull on the stone. The rocks were sharp and slimy. They felt like cold teeth. I aimed my light at the crack where the bubble went. It was a narrow split in the ceiling. It looked too small for me, but I saw another bubble slide into it, then another. They were all marching in a line. They were escaping. I wasn't sleepy anymore. I was scared, but I wanted to go where the bubbles went. I pulled myself toward the crack. I squeezed my shoulders. I hoped the rocks wouldn't bite me. I had to catch my silver friend before it got to the sky without me. The crack in the ceiling was tight. It looked like a mouth that was barely open. I put my hands inside first. The stone was slippery. It felt like it was covered in cold oil. I pulled myself up. My tank scraped against the rock. It made a screeching noise that vibrated right through my teeth. It sounded like a fork scratching a dinner plate, but louder. I got stuck. My chest was inside the crack, but my hips wouldn't fit. The rock squeezed me. It felt like a mean hug. It felt like the mountain was trying to crush me into a paste. I couldn't breathe in all the way because the walls were too close to my ribs. Panic started to flutter in my tummy. It felt like a bird trapped in a cage. I wanted to scream.
but I knew screaming wasted air. Dad said panic is the killer. I wiggled. I twisted my body like a worm on a hook. The sharp stone cut my wetsuit. I felt the cold water touch my skin where the suit ripped. It stung. I kicked my one yellow fin as hard as I could. My ankle hurt. Then, with a sudden jerk, I popped through. The water was different on this side. In the room below, the water was dead. It was still and quiet. But here, the water was alive. It was moving. It pushed against my face mask. It pushed against my chest. It felt like a strong wind, but heavy and wet. It wanted to shove me back down into the hole. I had to grab the rocks to stop from falling backward. The current felt like invisible hands trying to keep me away. I looked up to see where the bubbles were going. I expected to see the black roof. I expected to see more dark. The dark usually went on forever, but this time the dark was broken. Far away, way up high, there was a light, but it wasn't the sun. The sun is bright and yellow and warm. This light was ugly. It was a sick green color. It looked like the water in the pond behind my house where the frogs live.
It was murky and dim. It looked like a glow stick that had been glowing for 2 days and was about to die. I stopped swimming for a second. I just floated there, holding on to a slimy rock. My heart was thumping against the rubber of my suit. Was I seeing things? Dad told me that when divers get too cold or breathe bad air, their brains tell them lies. He said you might see castles or monsters. Maybe the green light was a lie. Maybe my brain was broken. I squinted my eyes. The green glow rippled. It moved like smoke. It didn't look safe. It looked poisonous. But the silver bubbles were rushing toward it. They were racing to get to the green. They knew something I didn't. I was small and cold, and I didn't have any other place to go. The dark below was full of sharp teeth and emptiness. The green above was ugly, but it was light. I tightened my grip on the rock. My fingers were numb. They looked like white sausages. I pulled myself up against the heavy water. I had to go to the green. Even if it was a monster, I had to go. I couldn't be alone in the dark anymore. The noise stopped. For a long time, the only sound in the world was the hiss and the bubbles. Hiss, bubbles. Hiss, bubbles. It was a loud noise, but it was a safe noise. It meant the black metal bottle on my back was still my friend. It meant I could stay awake. Then I took a breath and the hiss didn't happen. It felt like sucking on a straw that was stuck in a milkshake that was too thick. I pulled hard. My cheeks squeezed in against my teeth. The rubber mouthpiece felt dry and hard in my gums. I waited for the cold air to rush into my throat. I waited for the good feeling.
Nothing came. The metal bottle wasn't my friend anymore. It was empty. It was just a heavy rock strapped to my shoulders. I stopped swimming. I froze. My brain didn't understand. I tried to breathe in again, harder this time. I sucked until my head hurt, but there was no air. There was only the taste of rubber and old salt. The tube was dead. Panic hit me harder than the cold water. It felt like a giant hand grabbed my throat and squeezed. I wanted to spit out the mouthpiece and scream. I wanted to open my mouth and gulp down the water just to have something inside me, but I kept my lips tight. I knew the water was death. If I let the water in, I would never go home. I looked up at the ugly green light. It was so far away. It looked like 1,000,000 miles. My chest started to burn. At first it was a little burn, like when you swallow hot cocoa too fast. Then it got bigger. It felt like someone had lit a fire inside my ribs. The fire wanted to get out. My lungs were banging against my bones. They were screaming for air. They were begging me to breathe. I kicked. I only had one yellow fin left. The other foot was just a sock. I kicked with the fin and I pushed with the sock. It felt like I was running in a bad dream where your legs don't work. The water felt thick. It felt like I was trying to swim through clear glue. It held me back. It wanted me to stay in the dark. I reached up with my hands. I clawed at the water. I grabbed handfuls of the liquid and pulled it down past my hips. I pretended I was climbing a ladder made of water.
Climb, kick, climb, kick. The green light got a little brighter, but my eyes were acting weird. The edges of the world started to turn gray. It looked like someone was dirtying a window. The dark rocks faded into the gray. The bubbles from before were gone. The gray started to eat the green light too. My chest hurt so much I wanted to cry, but I couldn't cry. Crying takes air. My legs felt heavy, like they were made of lead. They didn't want to kick anymore. They wanted to dangle. My brain felt fuzzy and warm. It felt like falling asleep in the car on a long drive at night. A voice in my head said it would be okay to just stop. It said the burning would stop if I just went to sleep. No. I remembered my dad. I remembered the sun. I remembered the feeling of grass. I bit down on the dead rubber mouthpiece. I forced my heavy arms to lift up one more time. The gray was taking over everything. I could barely see the green glow now. It was just a tiny dot in the fog. I didn't know if I was moving up or staying still. I just knew I couldn't open my mouth. The fire in my chest was the only thing that was real. I used the pain. I let it make me angry. I clawed the gray water. I had to make it. I had to. My head broke the top of the water. It didn't feel like I was a swimmer. It felt like I was a cork shooting out of a bottle. The splashes of the water splashed all around me, making a wet slapping noise against the surface. I didn't wait. I spit the rubber mouthpiece out of my teeth. It tasted like old plastic and fear. I opened my mouth as wide as it could go.
The air rushed in. It didn't feel soft. It felt sharp and cold. It hit the back of my throat like I was swallowing a handful of ice cubes. I coughed. My body shook. I gagged and coughed again, spitting out salty water that tasted like tears. But in between the coughs, the air went down. It filled up the burning spots in my chest. It felt sweet. It was the best thing I had ever tasted. Better than candy, better than juice. I opened my eyes, but I had to shut them right away. The world was too bright. The light wasn't the ugly green glow from the tunnel anymore. It was a giant burning white light from the sky. The sun. It felt like someone was shining a flashlight right into my brain. My eyes watered. I blinked fast, trying to make the stinging stop. I wasn't in the cave. The ceiling was gone. The heavy metal bottle on my back tried to pull me down again. It wanted to sink. It dragged my shoulders back, making my face point up at the blue sky. I kicked my legs. My one yellow fin splashed. My sock foot hit something soft and slimy. Ground. I reached out with my wrinkled hands. My fingers sank into mush. It was mud, but it was wet and sticky. It felt like thick chocolate pudding, but it smelled terrible. It smelled like rotten eggs and old garbage. I dug my fingernails into the brown slime and pulled. My body felt so heavy. In the water, I was light. Now gravity was back. It felt like I was wearing a suit made of lead. I dragged my belly over the mud. Sharp sticks poked through my shirt. Small rocks scraped my knees. I didn't care. I just wanted to be out of the water.
The water was where the monsters were. The water was where the air ran out. I crawled until my feet were out of the pond. I collapsed. The mud was cold against my cheek. I lay there for a long time, just listening to the noise of my own breathing. In, out, in, out. It sounded raspy and wet, like a broken toy. Slowly the spinning in my head stopped. I wiped the slime off my eyes and looked around. I was in a swamp. The water I came out of was green and still. It looked like soup with leaves floating on top. Tall trees grew right out of the mud. Their roots looked like tangled snakes. There were bugs everywhere. Tiny flies buzzed around my ears. A dragonfly with blue wings landed on a piece of grass near my nose. It was loud here. Not scary loud, but busy loud. Birds were chirping high up in the branches. Frogs were croaking. The wind made the leaves rustle like paper. I rolled onto my back. The metal tank hurt my spine, so I unclipped the straps. It thumped into the mud next to me. I didn't look at it. I hated it. I looked at the sky. It was so blue it looked painted. A white cloud drifted by, looking like a fluffy pillow. I touched my chest. My heart was still beating fast, like a drum that wouldn't stop. I touched my face. My skin felt hot from the sun. I was alive. The bad men didn't get me. The water didn't drown me. The dark didn't eat me. But then I looked at the empty space next to me. There was just the mud and the trees and the buzzing flies. No dad, no mom, no police officer.
I pulled my knees up to my chest and wrapped my arms around them.
I curled into a little ball in the dirt. The sun was warm, but I felt freezing cold on the inside. The world was huge. It went on forever in every direction, full of trees and sky and noise, and I was just a tiny speck in the middle of it. I was safe, but I was the only one left.